It is really an honor to be here with all of you and to look out at this audience and to see the multi-generations that are here and to know that our future is bright because of all the young people in this audience and the leaders who are mentoring them and training them to be even greater leaders than those of us who came before them. I want to acknowledge Johanna as president. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I am so pleased that I could be here. As I was thinking about this occasion and the conference for APALA, I couldn't help but think how special it is that what you're talking about and what you're doing here is just a few days from the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. And most people remember the I Have a Dream, but I think most fail to realize that one of the main organizers of that was a labor leader, J. Philip Randolph. It was a labor coming together, and the march was called the March for Jobs and Freedom. And combining that with the dream, it just kind of captures the challenges of what we face, but also the optimism with which we look to the future. You see, for me and for all of us, I believe the idea and the linking of economic security and social justice and education are inextricably linked. You can't separate those. You can't talk about just one without talking about the rest. For me, I often say in my organization, it's the three strands of our DNA. It's who we are. It's what we've become because it is our fabric. For education, I know that those of us in this room, the opportunities we have are because of education. I grew up in a small town of 1,700 with 51 in my class. But in 7th grade, I had this dream that I decided I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't know which subject first. I thought briefly about English, and then I thought, oh my gosh, grading all those themes? Poetry? I'll choose something easy. I will teach math. But the idea that for 23 years, I got to live my dream is what this country is about. And one thing about education is once you give it to someone, you can never take it back. Once you free them to be educated and to know and to believe what the potential and the possibilities that exist, you can't ever take it back. You know, there's no society in the world that didn't value education. The rich and the powerful always got education. What made this country unique is not that we valued education more. What made us unique is who got it. We said everyone ought to have the opportunity for an education. And we're still fighting that battle today. 50 years after I Have a Dream, 60 years after Brown versus the Board of Education, we are still fighting the battle of equity and access, and that all children, all students, whether they are documented or not, they all deserve an education in this great nation of ours. For me, sometimes this battle about education is almost, it's a little discouraging. The idea that some believe so strongly that they and their children ought to have it, but other people's children don't need the same. But I know that together we will continue to do that battle, and as part of that battle, we have to be part of this labor movement. I'm so proud to be here with my labor brothers and sisters because without that, it just wouldn't happen. You know, the United States is not the only country in the world where some people are very, very rich. But what also made us unique is we are the only country that developed this strong and vibrant middle class, and that was done through the labor movement, only through the labor movement. Nothing in this great nation was ever accomplished without collective action. It's a group of people who believe in something larger and bigger than themselves, ideas that just won't let them rest, that there's more for all. And that's what this binds us together as this labor movement. There's a statistic that I often cite because it bothers me so, and I can't get it out of my head. When you look at the labor movement in this great nation of ours, our heyday was in post-World War II through about 1979. It's when union membership was the largest, percentage-wise, of the workforce in America. And during that time, from 47 to 79, as productivity in this country grew by 119%, hourly wages doubled. They grew by 100%. And the lowest one-fifth of workers, their wages went up 122%. And the wealthiest one-fifth, theirs went up 99%. It was a time when, because of the labor movement, all workers did better. But if you look at the 30 years since, 1980 to 2010, it's a very different picture. Productivity went up 80%, hourly wages 8%. The lowest one-fifth went up 18%, but that top one-fifth went up 65%, and the top 1% went up 275%. No longer, as they used to say, did the tide lift all ships. It was only some who benefited. Now, my home is in Arizona. I live in D.C. as president of NEA, and one of my favorite memorials is the FDR Memorial. It's very different. It's expansive, and there's so much symbolism there. And the first time I went there, I saw this quote, and you know how sometimes they say this is carved in stone? This is carved in stone at the FDR Memorial. And he was talking about America. And he said, the test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much, but whether we provide enough for those who have too little. And in 2013 in America, there are way too many people who have too little hope, too little possibility, too little access to education and decent wages and economic security. I think that's the challenge we face, all of us, as a nation. Which road do we want to go? To add more to the abundance of those who have much, or provide enough for all of our citizens, young and old, make sure that everyone has what they need. And the part that just absolutely has to be there as part of our DNA is the social justice. Whether it's civil rights or voting rights, women's rights, LGBT rights, workers' rights, immigration rights. It's all of us working together in collective action that really makes a difference. To all of the young people in the audience, I know that you are being mentored to be leaders, and I would encourage you to become teachers. We need you in the classrooms of America. Our students are getting more and more diverse, but the teaching force isn't. We need you to be leaders and activists as teachers. You know, I'm often asked about being president of the largest labor union in America. And I say to them, well, it's quite natural. I grew up on a farm, a lot of unions on the farm. And then having grown up in Iowa, I moved to Arizona, which is kind of the mecca of unionized workers. But what brought me into the union, plain and simple, is my first year as a teacher, I honestly believed that if I cared enough and I worked hard enough, I could deliver for every one of my students. I could give them everything they needed to succeed. But it isn't long and you realize that's just not possible. There are too many decisions made outside of the classroom that so impact what happens to the students inside. And that's what brought me to the union. I wanted a voice. I wanted someone to listen to me and say to them, when you pass this policy or this procedure or this regulation, I want you to know how it impacts students in the classroom. I want you to know those things that you do that hurt access and the possibility of all following their dream. A reporter asked me not too long ago what keeps me awake at night. And I said, it's knowing that if something doesn't change, we already know what is in store for the young people in America. I often think about the class, it's hard to project into the future for all of us. To my high school students on Wednesday, I used to say to them that long-range planning for them was Saturday night. But to think about 5 years or 10 years, and when you're 16 or 17, the idea that what are you going to be doing when you're 25 or 30, that is so far away. But all of us, or most of us, had the opportunity to go from school from kindergarten to 12th grade, about 13 years. So I often think of what we do as a nation in that time period. My youngest grandson is in the class of 2025. He started kindergarten last year. I told them, do not put him in a first-year teacher's classroom. No first-year teacher deserves that young boy. And this year he's in first grade, and I think about the class of 2025. I imagine this huge football stadium with all of those faces of those first graders. Such a diverse group, eager to learn, possibilities galore in their minds, unfettered by all of the things around them. They just believe about what could be. And of course, I don't know their names. I couldn't possibly predict what's going to happen to them next year or next month or even tomorrow. But what keeps me awake at night is that I know what will happen to them in 2025. If nothing changes, I already know what percent will drop out of school. I know what percent will be incarcerated, what percent will commit suicide, what percent will be teen parents. We can predict with pinpoint accuracy what will happen. The dropout rate in this nation does not fluctuate like the Dow Jones average. It's pretty constant year after year after year. It is a system that was designed to graduate about 70%. Unless you're American Indian, Alaskan Native, or African American, then it's closer to 50%. And the Asian Pacific Islander community is no different. There are many of those young people who do not make it through that system. And so we already know what the results could be if nothing changes. And that's what's so great about APALA. It's about a group of people who say the status quo is not satisfactory. We will not tolerate this for the future. I mean, if we bought light bulbs and only 70% of them worked, we would be indignant and outraged. And yet the richest, most powerful nation in the world consistently only graduates about 70% of its youth. That is not acceptable. We must change that. We must change the statistics for the class of 2025 and every other single class. So tonight, I would like to leave you with 3 words that I would like you to put in your vocabulary and to think about often. The first word is audacity. I love that word. When I first heard it was usually when I was young and somebody would say, I can't believe she had the audacity to wear that to church. So it was kind of a phrase that seemed negative, the audacity to do something bad. But then when I read President Obama's book, The Audacity of Hope, I understood that there's a real positive side. It's that belief and feeling deep down inside that nothing is too big. The audacity of dreaming. The audacity to believe that every single child in America deserves and should have that. The second word is courage. Often misunderstood. People assume if you have courage, you don't have fear or doubt. It's not what courage is. Courage is the ability to act in spite of fear and doubt. It's doing it anyway. And to all of the young people in this room, I hope that that's something that you really understand. If you're waiting for the day when you're always sure and there is no fear, that day won't come. But the day to act is here. And the third word I want you to always remember is power. Now, as an educator, they sometimes look at us and say, well, you shouldn't want power. I mean, you deal with young children. Yes, I want power. I want power. Power is the ability to act, to influence, to make a difference. And every single day in my life, whether it was raising my own 2 sons or every single day in the classroom for 23 years, I wanted power. I wanted the ability to act, to influence, to make a difference for every single student I met. So as you all leave this conference, the most important day is the one after it. Because the question is, what will you do differently on the day you leave here as a result of having experienced the network that you've met, the people you've listened to, the skills that you've learned in workshops? What will be different? Now, I have a theory of change. Everybody does. Some say that change causes stress, so that you need to learn to manage stress. And then the next author will say, no, change doesn't cause stress. Resisting change causes stress. Because the only thing constant in this world is that it just keeps changing. And when you try and stop it, it causes stress. And he said, P.S., if you don't believe me, look at your high school graduation picture. I mean, I used to be a brunette. Now, then there are those who say change is personality-based. You have early adapters and the resistors. And if you've read Dilbert, he says, change is good, you go first. Which is probably the most common. Everyone can say how to make their life better if someone else would just change. But the truth is you can only change one person, and that's you. You get to decide. My own personal philosophy of change is that it depends on one thing: comfort level. If you're satisfied with the way things are, why would you want it to change? If you're the wealthiest 1% in America, it's working pretty well for you. The system is working real well for you. But if you're not satisfied, if you're not satisfied with the way things are, see, not only are you willing to accept change, you will demand change. So when you leave this conference, I hope you are all dissatisfied. In fact, I hope you are gloriously dissatisfied. So dissatisfied with the status quo in this country that you can't take it another second. That you feel an energy building inside that says something's gotta change. Something's gotta change. And when you leave here, I want you to always have the audacity to dream big, the courage to act, and most importantly, the power to make our dreams our reality. Thank you very much.